Yeah,
I'm not doing it. Yeah, okay, listen, when we come in here from now on, right? Someone, if you remember, ask me. Yeah, ask me, remind me, please, because, those who aren't here need all that. Anyway, we're recording now.
They just have to be autodidactic.
Why don't I like it when you say it to me?
Oh, you hurt your feelings.
Aww.
So there you go. And then we have our discussions. I don't know if you haven't posted yet, it's fine. Usually in my online classes, I require that you post by Wednesday, but if we're not getting posts until Thursday, it's a pandemic.
I thought you said when we had our trial meeting last week that you were just gonna change it to Thursday since we had our meetings on Thursdays and so that we could talk about it in class.
Oh, I told you that, didn't I? Look how Samantha's already in there. All right, yeah, I'll do that.
I mean, I've worked on mine, but I haven't done all of it just because I wanted to have a chance to be in class. Yeah.
I thought we were gonna post it on Wednesday and then have class so that we could
talk about it.
Have more stuff to put in our responses to people's posts.
I think the way will work. Samantha, you could do it that way. I'm gonna go ahead and just say have your post in by Thursday because some people might not be, able to get it all done. So let's just do it from that. You're fine, Samantha. You're done with your initial one.
Good girl. It's that fresh air.
Already got responses and everything.
And see, when you get your work done, you get to go outside like Samantha. And,
And hope we're not with anyone.
What's that, Kyle?
Hopefully not getting in contact with anyone.
Not get in contact with anyone.
Samantha, are you socially distancing appropriately outside?
Yeah, I think so. For the most
think
part.
so?
Good
Am I
girl.
not allowed to pet my neighbor's dogs? Because I have been doing that.
Yeah, I've been petting my neighbor's dog too. It's the only thing I can cuddle.
I don't let anybody pet my dog anymore. I had a situation.
I don't even have a
Huh?
I don't even have a dog.
Oh, a dog is the best thing right now.
I have a cat, but my cat is so
I've got 2 cats and 2 dogs.
Oh, look, Samantha's got her cat. Who's got their animals? Let's look at our animals real quick.
Can anyone hear me?
There's Bayou right next to me.
I got my dog here. Yeah. Whoop, she's growling at me.
My cat's in the other room.
Cat. I'd pick mine up, but he's sleeping. I don't want to mess with him. Okay, well that's fun. Yeah, we like the animals. They help out a lot. So I've got some content. I want to try to get through some of this. The Civil War is a pretty big topic.
Yeah.
You had a chance to watch the first episode of Appearances. Did you met Barbara Fields, right? The historian?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was something she said in this first episode that made me realize that I wanted to be a historian. So just so you know, I like her. It's when she was talking about
What did she say?
she was talking about for her, it's been a long time, but for her, the importance of the Civil War, it wasn't about the military tactics. It was about when the war became about ending slavery, when it became about something higher.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, my cat's right here. Come here, kitty.
And when she said that, it was I realized I just wanted to be part of that too. You got your kitty cat there?
Yeah, he just walked by.
Yeah.
He won't let me pick him up.
I saw a lot of videos of angry cats. Did you see those the first week? That everyone's home. They're like, "Why are you home?" And they're
I know.
It's about that.
Work.
Where I live, I live in Leiden Woods, and it's it's a community, right? So they've taped off all the playgrounds. So, and we have a basketball court in one of the courts, and people are ignoring it, and there's bunches of them, 20 people at a time, and
Ouch.
And they said they're going to have to take down the baskets and stuff because they were taping them up, but that they cut them down. And, you just can't do that. People are really having a hard time.
Mm.
But that's the only place that they're gathering. Everywhere else, they've cut off.
Yeah, it's really important not to gather right now.
Except for Florida, they're still having those mega church gatherings that are like, that's got hundreds of people. It's insane.
And don't
My
you know
church
the
is
governor
online.
did tell them all to go home yesterday?
Wait, really?
It's like, a little too late now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
just yesterday. They're like,
Okay.
time to go inside. Yeah, the mega church is like 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
I think he got arrested, didn't he?
Probably.
Not sure.
The pastor got arrested for endangerment.
Wow.
Hmm.
I mean, it is, so.
You know, in New Orleans, they had a second line this past weekend with a brass band. And when the cops came, like 100 people, they told them to disperse. They were like, no. So the cop had to arrest the head of the second line and the head of the band leader. I'm like, why would you want to fall on that sword and go to a New Orleans jail right now? Jeez, man. All right.
Or the worst, the like 40-something people arrested at a coronavirus party.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's good.
God.
Someone's had like a stupid response. Like a stupidest response. Shit.
Oh, you know they did. You know, like, no, it's my right. Anyway, let me
Okay.
not be mean. Okay.
Back
So you
to
can see the Civil War slide right here, right?
Yep.
I'm having a hard time opening this. I put this together a while back, but for some reason, some of the external pictures are blocked. So if you open up this link once I give it to you, just, don't, just stay within this because it's just going to keep closing on you.
Okay.
So yeah, the Civil War, there's a lot going on here. And, you're asked to think about the African-American experience in this. And we're not always thinking about it from that perspective. And I think that, it's important to come to a lot of conversations specifically, driven by one perspective, or not from one perspective, but from a cultural perspective. But for the Civil War, I think it's important to kind of take a top-down look, right? I don't want to focus too much on, Abraham Lincoln, but, all of this is part of what plays out for the Civil War. So I read this quote from Abraham Lincoln last night in an article from Politico about the current president, and it stuck in my head. But Lincoln, I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me. And what he's talking about there is his own journey in understanding and race and slavery. And when you think of Abraham Lincoln, how do you think of him? Do you think of him as a hero?
I think of him as complicated. I know at the time, with those debates, I forget who he was debating against, but we've read those debates where
Stephen Douglas.
Yeah, where he said I'm not trying to get rid of slavery and stuff like that. It's a complicated situation because I feel that maybe he wanted to at the beginning, but then it was more politically advantageous. Kind of like when you look back on Obama and Hillary Clinton, and a couple of years ago they were saying they weren't for gay marriage, and now they're saying they are. It's kind of it feels like a politician thing to do, but in the end of the day, he did push towards actual change, even if, again, a lot of people say that was for political reasons, trying to get, I forget if it was France or England, to not join in the Civil War. It's very complicated.
England. So, I read a biography on Abraham Lincoln once from Carl Sandburg, and it talked about how when Lincoln was 12, he was up at night because I see you, Deb. He was up at night, and I think on here too, you can also raise your hand so I can see you, because I can only see 4 of you at a time. So if you want to make a statement and you're raising your hand, I'm not seeing you, get my attention somehow. but he was up at night, concerned with who had it worse, the black slave or the, Native American. And I don't want to have that debate, but, it's interesting that, this was something that Lincoln struggled with. And yet, when he comes to become the Republican candidate, it's a very moderate position and platform he's taking, a platform that says, we're not going to expand slavery into new states. We will allow it to remain where it is. Deb, what were you going to say?
That's what I used to think of him as a hero. And then when I found out that the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves, and he wanted to, and when free slaves came to the state, he sent them back. I mean, they wanted to be free slaves, but he thought it more advantageous to send them back.
In the earlier parts of the war, yes, he
Before
did.
Yeah. That kind of disappointed me.
Well, I remember a historian at one point arguing that he was a brilliant man, and he understood that the only way, and I don't know if this is true or not, all right, but we don't want to heroify people. And as we explore, the complexity of the human experience, here's one thought. If he was so intelligent as he was, he would have understood that as you move into, first off, he wouldn't be able to make any changes if he wasn't in office, right? Secondly, once he's there and the war is beginning, if the Confederacy succeeds in seceding, then he won't have any power to change what's happening there either. So some would argue that, Lincoln's first goal, and that's what I think Josh is talking about here, is where he says, and let me see if I can get to it. Well, maybe it's further down in here. It's way down in here. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's Horace Greeley, is taking Lincoln to task over, his reluctancy with the Emancipation. And in a letter to Lincoln, he says, it's highlighted right here in the middle, if there be those who would not save the Union unless they could do at the same time save slavery, I do not agree with them. If there be those who would not save the Union unless they could have at the same time destroy slavery, I do not agree with them. My paramount objective in this struggle is to save the Union. It is not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save the states or save it all by freeing the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that, right? But what I do about slavery in the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union. So, that's where he is in 1862. We've been at war for a year. And Deb, you look pretty disgusted right now.
No, I'm just, my screen is are you on the war thing? Because mine just is
What
stuck
now?
on.
Mine's still the Moodle.
Yeah, mine's still.
Oh, you're in the mood. Oh,
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
kind of lost.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's why you're doing all this, and I'm like, huh?
See, I'm still trying to learn this too. If something doesn't look right, be like, Alyssa, y'all, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be so crazy.
Well, Lincoln was also autodidactic, didactic, because he was self-learning.
That's weird. I could have sworn. Okay, can you see the slide?
Yep.
Yes, now I can.
Doggone it. Okay, yeah. So
Very
here's the
happy.
quote that I was talking about.
Okay.
It's a little embarrassing. Okay,
Nah.
yeah. So I was up here where
Yeah.
Lincoln says, I claim to have not control. I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me.
Yeah.
Right. So when he talks about his evolution on the understanding of slavery, because in 1862 in August, he's saying, listen, I'm just trying to end this, right, and save this Union. And slavery is secondary to that. But he begins to change his mind. He begins to change his mind on it. And let's see. Well, we're kind of moving ahead, so I'm going to go ahead and just move ahead. I want to point this out to you, though. You see, this is a map of the battlefields. It's a really cool Civil War paths of the CivilWar.com interactive battleship or battlefield map. But you know, where are the most battles fought in the Civil War? Virginia, right? And on, you know, the coast, in the middle of the coast. And where is the second largest number of sites of battles?
Georgia?
Maybe?
Georgia?
Georgia and Tennessee.
It's Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting, you know, coming from Tennessee and coming from, you know, I was born over here, but I lived a lot of my life like in this area right here. It's really interesting, the presence of that war, right, in the memory. It's like when I walk downtown Greenfield, you've got the memorials there to all the wars, and I can see for the first time like this, you know, earlier colonial history and the names of all the soldiers who fought in like the, you know, not War of Independence, that's the southern version of the Civil War, but the, you know, the war, come on,
Revolutionary War?
American Revolution. It's hard.
Well, it's because it's a war of independence, not a revolution.
Thinking's hard, yeah, but you know, up here, you know, this colonial history is more of the collective. So I just want to point out, like, the intimacy of this narrative to people in the South, because, you know, that this is the area that suffered, right? These are the areas where the battlefields were you know, cornfields and tobacco fields and the cotton fields and the industry, and then the majority of those who are going to die, you know, well, that's not true. There's, you know, but there's more that die on the Confederate side. Oh gosh. And then have y'all ever been, well, y'all probably haven't. There's a national park, Andersonville. You ever heard of it? It was a Confederate, war prison, right? And so it was like Northern soldiers that were held on this land in Georgia. And I mean, yeah, you should check it out. It's kind of disturbing. It's very much like the Holocaust in ways, when it comes to starvation. But anyway, moving away from that dark topic. So we talked about Lincoln. We begin our war. We're going to war. General Butler, I just love this dude. So, you know, he goes in and, you know, he takes this fortress and he just is like, okay, all you slaves, you're now contrabands of war. What is that? What does he mean when he says that?
Prisoners?
Well, not prisoners, but they're confiscations.
Yeah.
Right.
He's setting them free, basically. Well, that's
well, he's not really setting them free. He's gonna work them in his camp. But you know, it's like, you know, yeah. And I want to kind of highlight that point. We had this big war here, you know, and yeah, so it's confiscation of peoples there. We get our first real battle. Thousands of people die in this, and before this moment, you know, you have the Fort Sumter attack, and I think the only person who died, the person who died was a horse, right? But then you come to this battle, and in this battle, it becomes very
white horse.
Sorry?
A white horse.
Well, you know.
I don't know why they specified it was a white horse.
It's a sign. You know, if it was a black horse, would we even hear about it? No, let me not.
Oh, no. Oh, Alyssa, you need rest.
Okay, so you know, after this war, though, or this battle, it becomes very obvious that this is going to be a long war, and so we get this joint resolution where two Southern congressmen attempt to create amendments to the Constitution that'll preserve slavery, but that's not going to fly. The Confiscations Act goes through. And it says that, hey, any slave that was working for the Confederate Army that can get out, you know, will be forgiven of contributing to the Southern cause, and can come in and onto the side of the North. 1861, Lincoln pretty much in August acknowledges that we're in for it, and we had General Fremont who is also going to free slaves in the Confederacy of Missouri. But I want to go back here to General Butler for a minute, and then I'm going to stop talking about, the white perspective. But when he was in New Orleans, because the Union took over New Orleans very early on in the war, like the first year, and they did that because it was a major port, right? Maybe it was the second year. But very early on in the war, they take over the city of New Orleans, and the ladies in the front in the New Orleans, they weren't having it. They were Confederates, and so it was said that they were dumping their piss boxes or piss, onto soldiers. And do you know what General Butler said? He put it under martial law, and he said, let me tell you what. He's like, the next time one of you dumps, anything on one of my soldiers, we're going to treat you with the ill repute that you're setting yourself up to present, which was, woo. I mean, there was some hostility there, but if you ask someone from New Orleans, what they'll tell you is, oh, that's just a lie. We always had these beautiful, bushes and plants on our balconies, and someone was just simply watering their plants, and the water came down, and the soldiers took it all the wrong way, which for sure that's what was going on there. So, you get this act of war, and, I'm trying to see, I'm going to get into more of this. This is Lincoln signs the Compensation Emancipation Act. And basically what he's saying is, anybody who wants to liberate their slaves will be compensated for it. If they want to integrate back into U.S. territory. And so he's resisting making these real pushes against the Confederacy, right? When it comes to slavery, it's a slow process. Like he said in that quote, it took him a while to get there. It's General Hunter. He goes into there declaring Florida, Georgia. You've got these martial law places. Did I link you in to Robert Smalls? Is this one of the videos you're supposed to watch? That's unfortunate. If we were in class together, I'd have you. We'd watch this together. But I don't
remember seeing the link on the Moodle. Let me just.
I don't think I saw it.
So some of this stuff, I don't know how to.
Now I have a question. Are the slides themselves going to be in Moodle?
They are. I'm going to open them up.
Okay, good. Because it's going a little fast, so I just wasn't able to take notes. So. Yeah,
I'm sorry. There's a lot there. I'm trying to hit the highlights for you. And I just linked in the Robert Smalls video, and I'll go back to sharing my screen again then. You can see my screen?
Yeah.
You see Robert Smalls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert Smalls, he actually lived in South Carolina, and during the war, he is able to steal a Confederate ship and drives it to the North. And he was like, here you go, right? And so after the war, he becomes the first Black political representative in South Carolina. Pretty interesting story there. And look at this. He died in Beaufort.
I'm in class.
What?
Sorry, my dad was knocking on my bedroom door wanting to talk, and I had to tell him I was in class and couldn't do that right now.
I was like, we're all sick inside. Come talk to me. Like, I feel him, I feel him. And so the second Confiscation Act, right, says right here, unless the person claiming said fugitive, shall first make oath that the person to whom the labor of service of such fugitive alleged to be due to the lawful owner and has not borne arms against the United States in the present rebellion, right? Unless he does that, then he's not getting compensated. What does that mean? So we're getting stricter and stricter on these Southern rebelling states. Finn? Finn?
Yeah.
Eh? Are you listening? Am I boring?
Very
you?
much so.
This is a lot. I'll slow down a little bit. So you have the first.
I watched the documentary earlier too, so.
Oh, good. So basically what's being said here in the first Confiscation Act, where Lincoln is trying to bring in more of the Southerners, right? Bring them back. because you could claim to be a rebelling state, but if the people in the state aren't rebelling anymore, you're back in the Union. And remember, the whole time, Lincoln is never going to say that the states have seceded. He's saying that they're in rebellion, but they're still in the Union.
Oh, shit.
What's going on, Kyle? I think he's frozen.
What the hell? Well, I guess wait.
Kyle? Okay. By July of
I think your computer's
1862.
having like a meltdown.
Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can let him know. Can you please, mute until you are back? Okay. Can I just say Zoom and all this is a little tedious? Okay. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the July 17th, 1862 slide.
Wonderful. So the next step that Lincoln is going to take, right, is to say, fine, be that way. You can come and I will compensate you for your slaves. But not only do you have to take an oath of loyalty, but you've got to prove that you didn't fight against us. So you see how we're seeing these restrictions happening here, right? And then we have reinforcements. So General Butler, again, I just love General Butler. He decides to take regiments of Louisiana African-American soldiers and bring them into the Union. But you have to understand, in New Orleans, there was a standing Black army since 1718, right? And so they were all prepared to fight. They had fought side by side with Andrew Jackson in 1815. They had been organizing these Louisiana Colored Guards for decades. And so General Butler sees that there are these men who are well prepared, equipped to fight. And so he's going to bring them into the military. Now, again, you've got these abolitionists who are putting pressure on Lincoln in the North to pass the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln's going to drag his feet. We've been talking about that. And, as we understand, he who would be free must himself strike the blow. And that's what Frederick Douglass, I believe, says. And so in July of 1862, we see the mustering of the United States colored troops. Now, at no time are these Black troops going to be under the leadership of Black men, right? There's always going to be a white commander. Kyle, we can hear you, right? And look at this. Approximately 180,000 African-American men, right? 180,000 African-American men who had been enslaved volunteered for the military, and nearly 40,000 of them died.
Wow.
They comprised 25% of the Union Navy. Now, these are all Southerners, right? So you think about, if it's your freedom that's on the line, you're going to see many more numbers. And so by the end of the war, African Americans accounted for 10% of the Union Army. Again, remembering that, prior to this, there's a very small population of African Americans in the North. Clearly, they were overrepresented. And, I know the narrative is like, Northerners were all about this kind of, abolition. But, we talked about what that really was about politically for a lot of people, not for all, but for a lot. The Battle of Antietam was one of the bloodiest days in the battle here, and it was said that you could walk across the bodies across this field and never touch ground. And then you have the National Guard becomes the first in the Army to officially muster, and then finally the Emancipation Proclamation comes out. But Dad, you were talking about this. What was the problem with this order?
It was an executive order to make free all slaves.
Right, but it wasn't to free all slaves, right? It was to free slaves in rebelling states. This is what the Emancipation Proclamation actually said. We think of it as like, oh, well, Lincoln freed the slaves.
Right.
You know, that didn't really occur, right? The slavery was ended with the 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
Finn, you were in the civil rights class. When was the 13th Amendment ratified? That's a hard question. You got yours on mute. You're on mute.
1865, I think.
1865, 1866, somewhere pretty quickly after the Civil War is over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that. But as you can see here, the Emancipation declared all persons held as slaves within rebellious states.
Yeah.
So what about, you know, other states? Well, I mean, you know, most states were free states, but if there were slaves, like DC, right? Maryland, they had slaves in Maryland. Were they free?
No.
No. So, you know, there's a restriction here. The Conscription Act requires that, you know, men between a certain age had to actually fight. And so what happens now, as I don't know if you've ever heard of anything like this happening in, you know, more recently, but, you know, those who had money could buy their way out of their service. You know, you get your, you know, it's time to go to war, you could just get somewhere to go, a substitute draftee. And what that's going to lead to is, you know, draft riots in New York. You know, people who did not want to go to fight a war over slavery are going to, you know, rebel. And Frederick Douglass says, men of color to arms, urging African Americans to enlist. The cause is before you. This is our golden opportunity. Let us accept it and forever wipe out the dark reproaches unsparingly hurled at us by our enemies. Right? So the advocates there. Questions?
Yeah, you know, what I liked when we did that that film on the Civil War, Frederick Douglass's voice was Morgan Freeman.
Yeah,
I picked it up right away. I'm like, oh my God, that's Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
And
you know,
then when I read the credits,
Morgan Freeman needs to like record some comforting thoughts for us now, so that when we get all sad, we could just like listen to it and be like, it's gonna be okay.
I know, he's so.
You're like, Morgan Freeman says it's gonna be okay, right? I'd hug myself and rock to that, you know?
Yeah.
So we get the General Order 143, creating colored troops here and more regiments. In 1863, we have the Port Hudson, these Black troops participate in a successful attack. You've got these different fighting groups, the 3rd Louisiana National Guards, Louisiana Engineers, the Corps d'Afrique. Those are from Haiti, actually. The 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th Infantry Corps d'Afrique. And Battles of Milliken Beach. I want to go through this. You can kind of look through these. We have, again, more draft riots here. The 54th Massachusetts, ayo, there you go. There's your local Massey babies, all right? What you say, what you say. Colored infantry led the attack in Fort Wagner, and South Carolina loses 2/3 of their officers. You know, the generals were putting the African-American troops on the forefront.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And then, of course, we talked about Harriet Tubman and her band of bad bitches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've seen that one there. Nathan Bedford Forrest is going to be engaging on the southern cause in Tennessee. He's a Tennessean, and he's engaging in military tactics that have been around in the South for 40, 50 years at this point, where they're just coming in, you know, and hitting people and going back into the woods. And he's going to become the first wizard of the KKK. And
you know, I didn't even read that. I just saw his picture and I said, he looks like a, you know, he looked like who he was.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he organized, and after the Civil War, he organizes the KKK in Pulaski, Tennessee. We do have, you know, cases where when Black soldiers would surrender, they would be slaughtered, right? They weren't going to take them to the Confederate prison and feed them and they were going to make an example out of them. And so that happens. We get equal pay finally for Black soldiers in '64. So we're seeing some changes there. And then family emancipation. So those whose families, were with them could be freed as well. And then in 1865, the Confederacy approves of arming slaves as soldiers. And being in New Orleans, I went one time to the Civil War Museum, and it had been called the Confederate Museum at one time. And right before I moved up here, I decided to go in finally, because I had seen it, given it the stink eye many times. I paid my $10 to go in, and boy, by the end of it, I was like, why did I give these assholes $10? Why did I give them $10, right? But when I was in there was a whole display on the Black Confederate soldiers. And there was a Confederate who was there, appreciating the whole museum. And he's like, come here. And I was like, what? And he's like, look, see, there were Black men who fought in the South for the for the Confederacy. See, Blacks, were happy. And I just looked at this man. I was like, I'm not going to debate this man in the, Confederate Museum. I'm not going to do it. But that's a misnomer, right? There's no record of any Blacks actually fighting on the side of the Confederacy. And what he was talking about were the free men of color. These were mixed race people who owned slaves, right? They had, there was like this whole caste system in Louisiana. And, if you were a certain mixture quadroon, which would be, a quarter Black or less, then, if you could get your money, you could own slaves as well. And so, yeah, there were a few of those who were fighting, but they were fighting for the right to own slaves as well. So, I throw them in the bucket of racist. So Richmond finally falls in 1865. And, by the end of it, 168,000 African Americans had served, 38,000 have died. You can look at Christian's letter to, it's sad. And then we go into Reconstruction, and we're going to start talking about Reconstruction next week. So I'm not going to continue with these slides. But I want to talk a minute about the Black soldiers, because we'll talk about this a little bit more. But after the Civil War, the country has been torn in two, right? I'm going to come back to talking to you face to face. The country's been torn into two, and there's bloodshed, there's loss. The entire South has been brought to its knees. Part of the military tactics of Sherman was, and Grant, Ulysses S. Grant. U.S. Grant was, they called him unconditional surrender, right? And the idea, and this idea of battle tactics came from his time in the campaign against Vicksburg. So basically, they wanted total surrender of the South. And so Sherman begins this march, to the sea, where they destroy all the, the barns, and they kill all the animals, and they twist all of the, train rails, and they blow up buildings. And, the idea was, if you can completely break the back of the South, then you can win and bring them back in. But doing so meant that now there's a whole section of the country that's economically, devastated, that won't recover in the same way again, because now the free labor, right, or the unpaid labor is gone. Most of the men of, a certain age are gone, and the battles occurred in this area. So if it was your plantation, right, your field, you can't grow on that. That land is gone, at least for a while. The money that had been invested in Confederate bonds, it's gone. And my point is that we're going to see for the first time in U.S. history the federal government shifting in its role. And that's really important in the moment that we're in now, because there's been two major times in the past that we found ourselves at this precipice of the federal government having to intervene specifically and directly on behalf of the people. And so right now we're going through this, moment where we're seeing this economic stimulus package, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of what the government's going to have to do. But you can imagine 1865, what the government was facing at that moment, trying to figure out what to do with millions of newly freed people in a hostile, situation where a third of the country is, states that had seceded. How do you bring everybody back in? How do you create a cohesive and create a union once again? And that's the next step. That's what we're turning our attentions to moving forward. But a part of that is that you have these radical Republicans that were in office. And when I say radical Republicans, although the Republican Party of today hails back and says we are the party of Lincoln, that is a lie, a bold-faced and complete and total mistruth. In fact, the parties had a switch that occurs in the 20s and the 30s with the New Deal, right? When we see the economic depression at that time, and it's a Democrat who then begins these social programmings. Well, it was Republicans in 1865 and 1866 that are in Congress making these moves, but they were the ones who believed in freeing the slaves, and the ideologies of that are going to shift. That's okay, Emma. It's Zoom is kind of tricky, and the internet is the internet. So these radical Republicans are going to begin to create these acts, these legislative measures, right? Freeing slaves, making sure that we are going to have amendments to our Constitution so slavery will never happen again unless, of course, you're arrested. They're going to create the first equal protections laws. In fact, it's Senator and then Vice President Henry Wilson from Massachusetts, who is was a Grant's vice president. And before even the Civil War, he was working on equal protection laws. We're going to see, the 15th Amendment and the passage of voting rights for men, for Black men. But also at this period of time, the radical Republicans, because they see the heroism of these Black soldiers, they create these laws that say we're going to have a certain amount of cavalry, right, which is soldiers on horses, and a certain amount of infantry, and they're going to be Black infantry and cavalry. And so right after the Civil War, there is an opportunity for African American men to join the military, right? Mm-hmm. But that choice is going to have long-term consequences, because if you join the military, you're going west now, and you're going to be on the front ends of the federal government's removal of indigenous peoples. So that's a hard choice to make. But because of the bravery, right, that these soldiers showed through all of this, that is the consequences. And it's not until World War II, right, Finn, that our military is what?
Desegregated?
Yes, exactly.
Actually, it was just after 1949.
There you go, right? And so all this time, we're going to see this struggle. Now, for your discussion this week, you're asked, right, to think about the African American experience during the Civil War. I've given you kind of the outline here of what happened, and the bottom, the top down look at that. When I say top down, what do I mean?
Like from the beginning, right?
No, not really, but that would make sense. Top down. What do I mean when I say that?
So like the experience from like what's told like throughout history as up to now, and then what you don't see.
That's a good, that's not really, but that's a good call. Y'all are trying. I appreciate that. What I mean is there's a top down and a bottom up perspective, right? The top down is that institutional. So I was telling you the story of the Civil War, giving you an African American framework, but it's from like what Lincoln was doing, right? And what the generals were doing. You see what I'm saying? A bottom up then, right? Carlos would be what? If a top down is looking at it from government down, what would be a bottom up perspective?
From the people and the history that is told orally through.
There you go. Thank you very much. So for your post this week, right? I want you to think about the narrative that I just talked about from the other side of the coin, right? From the perspective of Smalls, from the perspective of the African Americans who are trying to navigate their lives in this moment. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Whew. We got 5 minutes, y'all. What questions do you have? Can I stop talking? Can y'all talk?
I have a question. So for week 11 discussion, it says like we have from, I forget the first date, to April 5th.
March.
Or April,
April.
yeah, April 5th.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was correct.
Each week our weeks are on Monday through Sunday.
Okay.
Schedule. Yeah.
So you should have your work in and respond to others' work by every Sunday for that week, right?
Yes.
So this should be due this Sunday?
Yes.
Okay. I got so much to do April 5th.
So because we're having a little bit of a thing, I can push this out until Wednesday of next week. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Very fair.
What exactly is this the discussion topic we're supposed to talk about?
Yeah, this is the discussion topic.
So if we respond to someone responding, can that count as one of our responses? Do we have to respond an original post, or can we respond to someone responding to someone else?
You can respond to respond to respond. You can respond to yourself if you're crazy enough to.
I don't agree with
really
you.
do that,
Like if
you can say, Josh, you have great hair and you've got great ideas.
Or just disagree with yourself, say one thing and say,
love
I
that
don't
one.
believe
She
that at
likes
all.
that. I like that one.
Self
They like that
devil's
one.
The brilliant
advocate.
thought.
Yeah. What are you going to do? You got to get your kicks in where you can. Cosmo, you got any questions?
No.
That's easy enough. Anybody else? Megan?
I'm hoping that I'll be able to figure out the Zoom camera by next week because it's driving me nuts that I am just a black screen. But other than that, no. Seems fair to push that out till Wednesday since we're all still figuring out this whole doing this online stuff.
Megan, you can reach out to student services. They might be able to help you, tech support.
I think that it might just be some issue with my laptop allowing Zoom access to the camera, which I can't really work on while we're in class because I don't want to be distracted. So
Okay.
I'm going to try more this afternoon. If that doesn't work, I'm going to reach out to tech support because I'm not the most computer savvy person in the world.
Emma.
Hello. Sorry about that. I had some difficulties with the internet, and it was kicking me off of different speakers on the computer.
That's okay. Just wanted to hear your voice. Make sure you're all right. You doing all right?
Yep.
Good.
My computer's not.
That is a beautiful picture, though. The background and everything. So photogenic.
All right, y'all. Well, like I said, we'll extend this due date. I am not extending the due date for the wiki. I want you to get that done so that I know you can operate in that. So that is due by Sunday. I will construct it right now so that it's up so that you can see the assignment, but it'll be up in 2 minutes. I'm going to copy it from another class.
So wiki is due April 5th.
What?
Here's my dog.
Where's your dog?
There he is.
Oh.
Can we say hello? Hello.
Well, if you don't have any other questions for me, I'm gonna close out, and just remember we'll have our meeting again next Thursday, right? Due date for the first one. I'll send all this stuff out for you. Keep looking for your grades. Send positive thoughts my way so that I can get through them as well, because as much as you want them, believe me, I would like to have the anxiety off my shoulders of waking up every morning being like.
So tomorrow you have office hours?
from 10 to 3.
Can we just stop in? Is there going to be a Zoom link?
Yeah, there'll be a Zoom link in the top of the classroom again.
Okay.
You know, and let me show you that really quick. Share screen. I'm gonna go to here. You can see our classroom, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and up here at the top, let me just move this. I will have any upcoming office hours for the week. You know, I'll put here what they're gonna be. I'm gonna try to be pretty consistent with them. And I'll still have like long office hours next week and maybe the week after that. Then I'll probably start scaling back a little bit. But each time that there's some, that morning of, if you come in here tomorrow morning before 10 o'clock, you'll find a link right here, like this one. It'll be right here, okay?
Okay. Also with Megan, I think have you tried to go to the top of like your the box with your, like where your camera's supposed to be? If you go to the 3 dots, you can hit start video. I don't know if you've tried that. Oh, okay.
Which is why I think that it's an issue with my webcam communicating with the app.
Okay.
I'm gonna download Skype and see if that works. And if it does, then I'm gonna like email the Zoom support and be like, hey, what's the problem here? Also, just general note for everybody. Wash your hands and don't touch your face.
Okay.
I can't help touch my face, but I'm not doing it outside of my house.
Like right now, I'm at my parents' house in New Hampshire, which is where I'm going to be until the world stops being crazy.
Yeah.
And like my dad is now retired. He was a fire chief and paramedic, and now he works with a New Hampshire public health organization. And so I'm getting like a lot of updates about COVID-19 and all of that. And like the big thing besides the social distancing is making sure that you wash your hands properly.
Yeah.
Which 20 seconds or more, which seems like a really long time when you're actually washing your hands, and not touching your face. Because we want to make sure everybody in our class gets this. It's really dangerous.
Yeah.
I've been trying to pull my hair back so that it's not touching my face, because that makes me want to like touch my face. You know, when your hair is in your face.
Yeah.
Also, if you have glasses, it's so tempting to want to just push them up when you're out, but I always just let them fall down my face a little bit, because I know if somebody sees me do that, maybe like jump back 8 feet.
The other thing is to be sanitizing high-touch surfaces. Like a couple times a day, you should be taking like a tissue that's soaked in either hydrogen peroxide or alcohol and wipe down your phone. And you should be washing your glasses a couple times a day with soap and water, especially if you've left the house at all. I didn't think of washing glasses thing until somebody else that my parents know was like, hey, you need to be washing your glasses too. And I'm like, oh.
I never thought about that. If anybody like breathes.
Yeah, the thing about COVID-19 is it likes to stick to hard, non-porous surfaces rather than like clothing and stuff. So anything that's like stainless steel or plastic or glass is what you want to be cleaning off as much as possible.
You know what I did? This is not a hard surface, but I had to go to the store.
Mm-hmm.
I like did not want to go to the store, but my friend made me a mask and I had glasses on, and she was like, you should pull your hair back, because I got all this hair. And I was like, what? And she's like, I mean, just pull it back and put it under. And I mean, who knows if that's going to help or not, but not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. And
over your head.
Like, because I'm the youngest person in the house, I've been the one venturing out to go grocery shopping and stuff. And when I get back, I make sure that all the clothes that I was wearing when I was out go straight into a laundry basket, separate from my mom's and dad's, and I get in the shower because my mom is in her 70s. So we need to be like super careful. But after that last grocery shopping trip, I think we're good for a while, because we have a bunch of stuff in the freezer and we've got a bunch of non-perishables. So.
And if you can like order and not go in, that's even better.
Yeah.
I actually,
the peak for COVID cases, at least in New Hampshire, is estimated to be the end of this month and early May. So while it's peaking, you want to make sure you're not going out, especially right now, right before the peak of active cases, because right now is when you're most likely to pick it up because people are contagious but don't feel sick yet.
True.
It is peaking sooner.
Yeah. Something that I like to point out is that for some people, it's like really hard to stay at home just because like, I know I'm still working. Like my boss doesn't necessarily like stick to my availability. So while I'm supposed to only be working 15 hours a week, she's got me scheduled for double that.
Ugh.
So it's like, and I work at some place where there's a lot of people going through there every day. So, and all they're doing is making us wear gloves. They don't even have masks for us to use. We were supposed to get stickers for the back of our cars to say that we were necessity workers. So we've gotten those. Places just don't care.
Yeah. There are actually a lot of really great patterns online for making your own reusable like fabric mask.
Yeah, I've seen those.
So if you're allowed to wear that at work, I would definitely suggest doing that. You can hand sew them if you're not somebody who knows how to use a sewing machine like me. And since you're at work a lot, you need to make sure that you're washing your glasses.
Yeah.
Which again is like one of those things you can never think of, but somebody my parents knew did, and so I've been trying to like share that with everybody I know that wears glasses. So it's like, hey, wash your glasses when you get home.
Well, thank you for all of that. Megan, were we supposed to have a meeting today at 2?
No.
That was me.
I have a class at 2.
Finn's got a class at 2. Megan, could we meet tomorrow between the 10 and 3 office hours?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Later
you.
in the day would be better.
Yeah, okay, yeah, 3, is that too early?
3 works just fine.
Okay, then I'll make it to 3:30 and I'll stay until 3:30 for you. Thank you so much for that. I double booked. It's hard. I'm telling you, this is hard. Confusing.
Yeah, life is very crazy right now.
Yeah, I spent a whole day like trying to like put hours for people to like sign up for and figure out how to do it, and then it just became this huge chaos mess, and I was just like, office hours. I can't do it, you know. like I can't.
Yeah, my day, like
my mind.
Wall things.
One good thing about not going out, I am saving money.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
I'm not overdrawn now.
I would spend like $15 on coffee, like some weeks. It was so bad. And I'm realizing, oh, that's where all the money is. Here it is.
And
I usually get like matcha lattes like, at least once a week. And so what I did was I ordered my own matcha powder, and I've been making myself matcha lattes at home, and it's been great because it's like, wow, it's so much cheaper just to make this myself.
Nice.
I get food stamps, and they gave us some extra food stamps.
Good.
For some reason, I mean, my regular allotment will be on the 4th, my whole big $25 a month, but they gave us some extra. But I don't want to go out and spend it right now because I don't want to go shopping.
I think
don't go out unless you have to right now, because
I'm
right
not
now
gonna.
everybody's going to be.
Well, there's also something that I think Stop and Shop is doing this again. They stopped for a while because they were being overwhelmed by the amount of people doing it, but you can order online and then you go there and then they bring it out to you without any contact.
Can you pay with food stamps though? I mean, I don't understand if they have some type of.
Yeah, I think you definitely can.
I'd call them and find out.
Making payment, they wouldn't be able to discriminate on the kind of payments they take, because that would have a larger impact on a certain group of people, and that would be discrimination. That would be illegal.
Right.
Yep.
Yay! Fin, right? Civil rights law.
Yeah.
Love that civil rights.
It's for everybody.
But yeah, if anybody ever wants updates on like procedure and stuff, I'll probably know them because my dad works in healthcare. I have a friend that works at a lab at Mass General, so I have a lot of like extra tips and stuff.
Well, there we go. And then I guess every week you can let us know,
updates.
Updates, right? But I want to know when we can get the hell out of here. That's what I want to know. When can I go camp?
I know that too.
Well, I mean-
I'm getting cabin fever.
Oh, and then my car is taking a piss now, so I've got to start looking for a car.
Oh no!
Totally.
At least you don't need to go anywhere.
Yeah, right?
Well, she called me when she was walking back from the.
Yeah.
From the
Oh no!
No, I'm telling you, it's been a crazy. You know that it was that storm. This is ironic. That storm on Sunday flooded my engine.
I gotta go.
Bye.
Bye,
Finn.
Yeah, I have to go too.
I'll see you tomorrow, Finny Fin Fin.
See you tomorrow.
I'm also at a meeting at Tears, so.
Okay, we're heading out then. But I was just saying that, my car survived flooding in New Orleans, but it's a thunderstorm up here that finally takes it out. You know?
Oh no.
All right, y'all. Well, as you know, as always, I care about you, right? I'm here for you. You've got my phone number. Until I see you again, make good choices. Be kind to each other. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands, all right?
Wash your hands.
All right, y'all. I'll see you on the flip side. Come and see me in office hours. Come chat with me. Let me know what's going on with your papers, all right?
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, y'all.